there was a time when the beginnings of the British Empire was we just sowed huge amounts of wool, and that was why we bred sheep. We didn't breed them for meat, we bred them for wool. And these sheep produce huge amounts of really high quality wool, and they do it, you shear them twice a year. So they were designed to just produce huge amounts of wool. My family farmed a place in North Devon for about 400 years. Very small farm, was a dairy owned by my granddad, about 100 acres. He had about 40 cows. And a very good living, moderate but good living. But when I sort of grew up, I did want to farm, but it was a time when things were changing a lot, like supermarkets were beginning to happen, Europe was beginning to happen. It just put a lot of pressure on small farms, and that's carried on ever since. But it just wasn't something he thought would be a good idea. And at that time you didn't have farmers markets and all those sorts of things. You just were being bought by big corporations, so you didn't really have any direct routes to market like you do now. And my granddad was, I say, more guilty of that than anyone. A lot of this land, what's happened is they was ploughed up about 50 years ago. Government said we need to produce more land after the war. We need to feed the nation. My granddad was the first person to do that in Devon. And when he did it, it must have been a miracle. He was a dairy farmer. The ground would have been rough, not that productive. Plough it up, drain it, all the water goes off, so when it rains it's dry, and then it turned into pasture. So I think it just needs sheep and organic matter, and I think this will absolutely transform. So it just doesn't feel like it would get sheep fat at the moment. I don't think there's enough interaction with the soil and enough going on. But I think we can change that over 2 years and we can start getting sheep fat, I think. And then I bought this with a friend. So it's 20 acres. What we bought it for is something called BNG, which is Biodiversity Net Gain, which is natural capital. A horrible word in farming, and the reason why a lot of land's going out of reach for normal farmers. But I've sort of gone for the, if you can't beat them, join them. BNG is, say the population of the UK is grown a lot, we haven't got enough housing. What they decided is you can't just build somewhere, you basically have to replace the nature you lost. So this is stuff I'm talking about, where that's slowly decaying in a really nice way and creating, and it's basically keeping the soil really wet. But you can see all that fungal network. You have a look at it, that's all fungi. And we wouldn't have got that last year. And if we just keep doing it, it'll just get better and better and better and better and better. So I went off to college. Then I ended up in publishing for about 10 years in London. My granddad then actually passed away. Felt very guilty because I didn't go and see him enough. And then my nan, who I was very close to, about 6 years later, she got unwell. So I went down, moved back down to the southwest, spent a lot of time with my nan. And whilst I was there, speaking to my nan lots, it wasn't particularly nice 6 months, particularly for her. But during that time, I did a lot of thinking about farming and decided that I potentially wanted to, we call this fattening land, because it's just it's still growing like crazy. And I think these sheep are going to be, I don't think they'll lose their weight, and I think by next June we could have something pretty interesting. So, I think we should go and try and catch the two. I'll do water, and then we'll try and catch the two thing, and then we'll try and get the rest in, so at least they're in one place. What I decided then to do was not graze it last year, let it really grow last year, and then the grass was high. I then basically did what I'm doing now, split into sections, put in long walls, and basically fed the soil. So at night, worms come up, grab the soil, bring it into the soil, grab the grass that's been trodden down, and then they slowly build up the soil. So one thing to think about is in the UK, we're going to get a lot wetter winters, and we're going to get a lot drier soils and drier summers. And this year is very typical of that. So our most important job is to get water, is to get the land holding water. And to do that, you have to feed worms. This is one of our rarest sheep. You can walk in if you want, we'll see them. This is probably one of our rarest breeding sheep. All of our granddads down here would have had them, but commercially they're a bit of a nightmare because they go on their backs and you have to just keep an eye on them. They're not very good mums, and they get very, very fat, which is not for most people. But personally, my perimeter fencing isn't brilliant. They're never going to look to get out of that, so it's perfect for that. They're very heavy, so they can push down the grass, which is exactly what I need. And they just move very slowly and they're very chilled. I think they could be the fattest sheep ever seen. I'm just hoping Jeremy Chan wants them then. Not many people will. But what I try and do here is I've come up with something called, I'll try and remember the word now, I'm feeling a bit dopey, is mulch. So basically living mulch. So I think as I work more and more with it, I realise how important living mulch is. So basically what we did, we let it grow all summer, put the sheep in winter. If you just let grass die, it dies, oxidises, and that kills the top of the topsoil and nothing can get in. But what I did was let the sheep push it in, and then they poo on it, trample it, and then that's basically you start then getting a fungal network, and now you get something called a living mulch. So the fact that after 1 year we've brought back 6 plants already, we're not planting anything, we're just using sheep. If I work with the local wildlife trust, I think they'd rather no sheep, take off a cut of hay, end of the year, take it off and just reduce your organic matter, which I think is nonsense. And then they would probably get us to try and buy seeds. So taking away organic matter, I don't think they've had a huge amount of grazing animals in here. So the potential of this field is absolutely huge, but to me it just feels at the moment, oh, there's a lot of young swallows and older swallows. I see this year's swallow, that one's getting ready to feed and go off to Africa. So basically I have farmed this sort of land before, but never measured it. This year, this project, we're going to be measuring everything from the very beginning, and that's really exciting. So all the things I say I can do, I can actually prove. And if I can't, then I can't, but I'm pretty sure I can. But for me, yeah, the potential is there, but just at the moment, it hasn't got that feel of like energy from the soil, but that will change very rapidly. So I think this farm over the next 2 or 3 years will change hugely. But as ever, I just need perimeter fencing. At that stage, I approached my butcher, Ian Warren, who's son of Philip Warren. This is like 18 years ago. Because I knew London well, I had this crazy idea of maybe setting up a supply chain for them in London. And luckily they went for it. So then I went back to London and then basically worked with the Warrens to get restaurants on board. For 2 years, it was incredibly hard, like trying to get restaurants are very loyal to butchers, and we never wanted to compete on price, we wanted to compete on quality. So slowly it started happening. We met some very exciting chefs, and restaurateurs. The first one that really made it was a chap called Tom Adams, who was at PitQ, which was an absolute, just went absolutely nuts. It was it's the beginning of like a real food renaissance in London. Spring onion things again, which is just really weird. But it's a beautiful oak. So trying to just change this, and what I'll now show you is there's 10 acres of pasture. So it'll sort of show you the direction we want to head in. A lot of chefs were coming back from Noma, the likes of James Lowe, Isaac McHale, and they really were interested in finding out where their meat came from. So then we got them all down to Cornwall, and then for the next 3 or 4 years, the business in London grew really, really well. We met a chap called Ben Chapman. I remember that was exactly where I met Ben. It's quite weirdly, Ben, I met him properly at a tasting session at a Flatiron, and after I sat opposite him, and after the meal, I remember phoning up my butcher and saying, whatever this chap does, we need to support it because I think he's clever. And then he opened Smoke and Goat, and the rest is history, really. So we've bought 40 acres of land. So there's 20 acres of, 10 acres of this, which we think was a bird mix. There's 10 acres of what we think was like veg, and then there's 10 acres of pasture, and there's 10 acres of woodland. So we've had an ecologist out who's taken a base measurement of everything to see how much biodiversity we've got. And once we get the results, we'll then work out how we increase biodiversity across the site. What is quite cool, I don't know if we want to walk down there, but it comes with a, we're not quite, oh, there's quite a lot there, isn't there? It comes with a nice little cottage, and we're not quite sure of its history. And because we're in an area of outstanding natural beauty, it's quite hard to get it changed into anything, but obviously the temptation is to try and build a nice little house or a cottage for chefs to stay. So that's something we'll work on, but we'll see what happens. This is where it got very special, actually, I invited myself to Extremadura, to the Dehesa, and I met, I think, is the best maker of jamón in the world, basically. And to me, jamón is the world's best meat product. And when I was walking around with them, what I realised was that their pigs were the sort of pigs they use, the Iberian pigs. For about 18 months, they've got a really hard lifestyle where they're on the Dehesa looking for scratching a living, scratching for food, walking miles to get it. And after 18 months old, they then put them into the acorn fields. And the acorn fields are rich in oleic acid. The pigs probably weigh 80 kilo at that stage. and then in the next 4 months they double their weight. So then I realised to get world-class meat, you need an animal that's walked around a lot and then gets very fat on beautiful stuff at the end. Wait a minute, sheep. And sheep probably live for 8 or 9 years. They have like probably 10 to 12 lambs. And then the farmer decides at some point, you know, just after weaning of lambs, which flock does he not want to breed from next year? And he probably gets around about 15% of them. And I suddenly thought, those animals have walked a huge way. What about if I actually put fat on them? And then that was the idea. So it was a complete gamble. And basically, sheep, they build lanolin for their glands, which waterproofs them. So when you have that tacky flavour from lamb and hogget, that's lanolin. The only issue with the mutton was because they've walked so far, it is really tough. But luckily, my butcher has spent £1 million on a cutting plant and hanging facility. So essentially, I remember my very first ones, I bought about 50, got them very fat, started, then killed my first 6. That was quite harrowing, actually sending sheep off for the first time. Then hung them, and then I remember the first one we sent to Lars with James Lowe, and I went to go and eat it on a Sunday morning, and I was expecting it to be tough and tacky, and it was actually really tender, and there was no tackiness, and I was suddenly like, oh shit, this is actually going to work. So that was the beginning of it, really. Now we've got this land. This is about to embark on what is a very exciting project, but we're going to do it very, very carefully. We're going to measure absolutely everything. And my absolute dream is, if I go back to the trip to the Dehesa, I think oilic acid is the answer, the secret to incredible, incredible meat. If I've got animals that have walked a long way, all the flavours in that meat already, my job is to buy thin sheep and get them fat on a huge diversity of plants, so that'll add flavour to the fat, and then the aging process makes that, you know, intermingle with the meat and make it fantastic. But to me, the giveaway that it's all a bit dead is that you just, you know, and I would say in 5 years' time, if you have to start from the ground up, and you need invertebrates on the floor, you need birds scratching around. So I would say, yeah, it's just a giveaway. It's little science, it's what's not here that is the giveaway, really. But it's a major, major, major project. There's 10 acres of this, but I'm beginning to walk it, get used to it, learn it. But I think within 3 or 4 years, I think we're going to see. Now, there's a breed of sheep. I remember having a conversation with a French lady who had them in France. She said her clump forest escaped, found a place full of cobnuts, hazelnuts, and they basically gorged on them. She got them back and they kept on trying to escape and find them. So she was convinced this breed of sheep absolutely obsessed with acorns. And there's a society of clump forest breeders. So I will be getting in touch with them, and I think I'm going to give that a real chance. See, can I buy their culls and can I get them here, and can I work out if this is actually going to work? But the truth is, there's always been upset. Like, as soon as I had that conversation, I was like, that's interesting. They are beautiful sheep. I had one once and it was the most perfect looking sheep for what I want ever. So you've got to find out how good the eating is. If the eating's good, I can then work out if they actually like hazelnuts. And then, yeah, so the dream's on, I think.